Hello and welcome to this distance lesson today. I am called Nalionge Maximilianus Iwoko, and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's lesson based on the philosophy lesson, based on the consolidation exercises, which shall be on the sophist and the Post-Socratics, that is Plato and Aristotle. So we are going to have consolidation exercises, MCQs, on Plato and Aristotle. Then we proceed with a sample essay type question on the sophist. So, following the previous lesson, animated by my colleague Sir Chem Celestine, we spoke elaborately on the sophist, Plato, Aristotle, and this today we shall just give a reminiscence, a recall on it, and move on to the assessments. So, overview of the previous lessons. During our last class, we went through the ideas, the philosophy of the sophist, and we said the sophists were itinerary philosophers who move from one place to another, disseminating, teaching students or teaching their peers. And according to the sophist, they were focused on, they shifted knowledge from cosmocentric to anthropocentric, focusing on man, and they were highly animated by their skepticism and epistemology. We will talk about the skepticism, we'll make reference to Gorgias, and even the ethics or the epistemology of the sophist. We raise Protagoras of Abdera, and their thoughts on ethics. We discussed that, or justice, with morality, we discussed that with Thrasymachus. So the main idea of the sophist was that of knowledge, and they believed that there is no absolute right or wrong, and their important contribution was on the aspect of rhetorics and debate, public speaking. And the influence today, the importance of the sophist today is that we find that with the politicians and even the art of public speaking today in the society, how people can easily express themselves. Just another panoramic presentation on Socrates, who immediately came after the sophist, debunking. Please, dear students, I will kindly invite you to unmute your mic for now. Kindly unmute your mic. Thank you. So we have Socrates, who came in with his epistemology and ethics, equally shifted from that cosmocentricism to anthropocentrism, meaning focusing his philosophy on man. And Socrates introduced new method of teaching, that is the myoethics, the Socratic myoethics, and the Socratic irony, whereby he influenced other thinkers like Plato and Aristotle who came after him. We equally had Plato and Aristotle with their respective ideas, the Post-Socratics who came after Socrates, and a direct student of Socrates was Plato, and a direct student of Plato was Aristotle, whereby they had different views. Like for instance, Plato, whereby we consider Plato to be like a rationalist, because his ideas emanate from that of Parmenides and Heraclitus on the aspect of change in the society and on the aspect of the existence of things in the society, whereby we realize with Plato that the idealness, the best way to obtain knowledge is to move to the intelligible world and not the world of the senses, which we see that through his allegory of the cave and the divided line. And we equally have the ethics and epistemology of Aristotle, where he is mainly noticed to have introduced a new system of politics, and he believed observation and comparison were necessary to gain knowledge. So that is just a panoramic presentation or description of what we saw during our last lesson. So the first application exercise will be on multiple choice questions focused on Plato and Aristotle. Question 1. In Plato, what are the 3 ways in which the forms inform material things? In Plato, what are the 3 ways in which the forms inform material things? A, causation, participation, imitation. B, imitation, generation, and transformation. C, causation, transformation, and creation. Then D, causation, creation, and participation. So I acknowledge the presence of Lycée Bilen de Kounou. I acknowledge the presence of Fabian. I acknowledge the presence of Okita. So this is the first question. If you wish to answer, you can just unmute your mic, please. Just unmute your mic. So this is our first question. In Plato, what are the three ways in which the forms inform material things? Is anyone there? Okay. The right answer is A, causation, participation, and imitation. The second question, in Plato, what is the status in being of material things? In Plato, what is the status in being of material things? A, material things are real objects. B, material things are innate, material things imitate reality. C, material things imitate objects. And D, material things have their predicables but are not their predicables themselves. So, which is the right answer? A, B, C, or D? In Plato, what is the status in being of material things? The right answer is D. Material things have their predicables but are not their predicables themselves. Question 3. What innovation does Plato bring to his master's notion of function? That is the ergon. What innovation does Plato bring to his master's notion of function? A, Plato introduces the golden mean. B, Plato introduces measure or limit. C, Plato defines function in terms of species. And D, Plato identifies functions with forms. So, which option is the right answer? If you wish to answer, you can just unmute your mic. Which option is the right answer? A, B, C, or D? What innovation does Plato bring to his master's notion of function? That is the ergon. The right answer is B. Plato introduces measures or limits. Question 4. What is the cardinal virtue in Plato? What is the cardinal virtue in Plato? A, temperance. B, wisdom. C, justice. And D, courage. What is the cardinal virtue in Plato? Is there someone on? Okay, the right answer is C, justice. When we go through the philosophy of Plato, we get into the tripartite nature of the soul and how the soul is transmitted into the society, and the target is to live a happy life. And when there's a compatibility between the respective part of the souls and the virtue it obtains, it brings, we realize that there's justice in the soul, justice in the human being, and justice in the society, which we see how it is being transmitted in his political philosophy. Justice in the society. So the right answer is justice. The cardinal virtue in Plato's philosophy is justice. Question 5. What is the political goal of Plato's tripartition of the soul? What is the political goal of Plato's tripartition of the soul? A, peace in the society. B, prosperity in the society. C, justice in the society. And D, democracy in the society. So, what is Plato's political goal? The right answer is C, justice in the society. So the right answer is C, justice in the society. That's the political goal of Plato's tripartition of the soul. Question 6. What are the sources of Aristotle's idea that being is self-identity in change? That being is self-identity in change. What are the sources of Aristotle's idea? Where does Aristotle get this idea from? A, physics and logic. B, logic and biology. C, biology and physics. Then D, change and status. Is there someone on? I see, I acknowledge the coming in of Timothy. Is there someone on? What are the sources of Aristotle's idea that being is self-identity in change? Is there someone? The right answer is B, logic and biology. So Aristotle got his ideas of being in his self-identity from logic and biology, following the processes of change in the society. Question 7, but before going to question 7, we say, as you see, logic, we spoke about logic. Being is something that can be identified with attributes and which can be the subject of a predicative judgment. So logically speaking, we know the role Aristotle played when it comes to logic. So he obtained his ideas from logic, and again, secondly, primo from logic and secundo from biology. And we say in biology, how being is a process, or the process of, being is a process, that is the act of to be, the present continuous tense of the verb to be. So that is being, that is to be engaged in a dynamic process. When we talk of change, moving from one state to another, from one condition to another, what we call a kinesis, change in the society. Consequently, to be is to be engaged in a dynamic process of change while still remaining the same. That is the act of kinesis, the dynamism that takes place in a human species or the species in the society. So that is a biological connotation and a logical connotation of the idea of change in Aristotle. Question 7. What is the difference between Plato and Aristotle with respect to forms? A, Aristotle combines form and matter. B, Aristotle separates form and matter. C, Plato combines form and matter. And D, form and matter are composites. Is there someone on? The right answer is? The right answer is A, Aristotle combines form and matter. Question 8, we'll just move a little bit fast because we have a lot to do. Question 8, what are the principles of continuity and change in accidental change? What are the principles of continuity and change in accidental change? A, matter and form. B, final cause and efficient cause. C, substance and accident. Then D, actuality and potentiality. The right answer is substance and accident. Question 9. What are the intrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? What are the intrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? A, matter and form. B, final cause and efficient cause. C, substance and accident. Then D, actuality and potentiality. Is there someone want to attempt? Is there any student? Yvonne, welcome on board. Ngala Yvonne, do you want to try? What are the intrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? If you want to answer, just unmute your mic. The right answer is A, matter and form. Question 10. What is the religious implication of the final cause in Aristotle? What is the religious implication of the final cause in Aristotle? A, it is used to prove the good. B, it serves in proving that happiness is the goal. C, it serves in proving God's existence. And D, it enables understanding of religion. Ngala Yvonne, do you want to attempt? I see Fabian on board. I see Okita, student from the Sebilen de Kunu. Are you there? Okay, the right answer what is the religious implication of the final cause in Aristotle? The right answer is C. It serves in proving God's existence. We'll go through, we have a reminiscence of Aristotle about the unmoved mover and the uncaused cause. So we realize that from this, it permits us to have an idea to prove the existence of God through Aristotle. So that is the final cause. Question 11. In Aristotle, what is the object of first philosophy? That is metaphysics. In Aristotle, what is the object of first philosophy? A. Being. B. Being as being. C. Substance. D. Accident. Who wants to try? Who wants to attempt? Yes. Just unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. I can't get you. Someone says question 11. Elise Bilende Kunu says question 11 is B. That is good. The right answer is B. Question 11. In Aristotle, the object of first philosophy is metaphysics. Remember, first philosophy, we consider it to be metaphysics. Yeah. Aristotle, the term metaphysics was created by Aristotle's librarian, Andronicus of Rhodes. While classifying the books of Aristotle's shelf, he realized that he found a particular set of books with the same content, the same subject matter, but did not know where to put them. So in the classification of the shelves, he created another shelf and titled it Ta Meta Ta Physica, that which lies beyond the physical. That is the origin of metaphysics, and that is what Aristotle called first philosophy. Reason why you will realize with René Descartes' books, his book titled Meditations on First Philosophy. First philosophy there is metaphysics. So the right answer in here is being as being. As being per being is the object of study or the object in Aristotle's first philosophy, what we call metaphysics. And for Aristotle, as I earlier said, metaphysics is the first philosophy. That's the object of metaphysics is being qua being per being. That is, as you can find in bracket, as being, and the attribute which essentially belongs to it. Question 12. In Aristotle's metaphysics of accidental change, what are the principles of continuity and difference? What are the principles of continuity and difference in Aristotle's metaphysics of accidental change? A. Substance and accident. B. Essence and existence. C. Subject and predicate. Then D. Genus and species. We're on question 12. Is there any attempt? Ngala? Lise Bilende Kunu, that is good. Lise Bilende Kunu has answered, and Lise Bilende Kunu is saying that is D, where the right answer is substance and accident, not genus and species. That constitute the metaphysics of Aristotle's metaphysics of accidental change. So we talk of substance and accident. Soup, stare. Soup, what stands? What constitutes onto which the essence stands? Like the soup and the stare. For any change, it should be noted that for any change to occur, there are two fundamental principles following the philosophy of Aristotle. There must be a principle of continuity to hold the terms of change. Otherwise, there will be a total disappearance of the old thing and the spontaneous generation of the new thing out of nothing, which is metaphysically impossible because something must come from something. Something will not come out of something. Such a principle ensures continuity in the change process, and that is what we call the substare, the substance. The second principle of change is there must also be the actual mode of being, before and after. So the actual mode of being at the beginning of the change process is different from the actual mode of being at the end of the change process. Otherwise, there is no change at all. So such a principle is a principle of difference, what we call here accident. Question 13. The metaphysical structure of change requires two core principles, namely A. Substance and accident. B. potency and actuality. C, matter and form. D, subject and predicate. The right answer is Gala. I can see Gala trying to connect. Is there someone on board? The metaphysical structure of change requires two co-principles. Namely, the right answer is potency and actuality. That is from potentiality to actuality. So that constitutes the metaphysical structure of change. For any change to occur, as we previously explained, there must be a composite of two principles. Here, there must be a principle capable of receiving a new mode of existence from a previous mode of existence. Otherwise, there will be a mere juxtaposition of disparate entities. Such a principle is the mere receptive capacity of what we call potentiality. So we move from potentiality to actuality. So that is potency or potentiality. And the second principle is that of actuality, which is that the actual mode of being at the beginning of change process and the actual here and now of the new being at the end of change process. This principle is known as actuality. That is the act. Every change process therefore requires two governing core principles, potentiality and actuality. From potentiality to actuality, that is potency and actuality. Question 14. What does potentiality, that is potency, mean in Aristotle? What does potency mean in Aristotle? A, the actual mode of being of an entity. B, the capacity of an entity for receiving a new mode of being. C, the principle of change. And D, the final mode of being of a changing entity. I acknowledge the presence of Niosimo, who just joined us. I acknowledge the presence of Mba Timothy, students from Bese Bileng, Dekunu. Is there any attempt? Ngala, is there any attempt? The right answer is B, the capacity of an entity for receiving a new mode of being. Question 15. Or before we get to question 15, we recall in Aristotle that actuality is a present mode of being of an entity. What is actual? The present mode of being. Potency is the capacity of an entity to receive a new mode of being. In this composite, we then say substance is potentiality, while accident is the act, which leads to actuality. So the reason why we also move from potentiality to actuality, which helps in the process of change. Question 15. What are the extrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? What are the intrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? A, substance and accident. B, matter and form. C, efficient cause and final cause. Then D, all of the above. So what are the extrinsic causes of being and becoming in Aristotle? The right answer is C, efficient cause and final cause. Again, for a recall, a changing thing has some cause or reasons for it changing outside of it. There must be a reason, a particular reason for anything to effect a change. For change to take place, there must be a particular reason. In the material world, things do not come into existence by themselves. No, something makes it to come. There must be something else that brings another thing into existence, that explains its existence. Such cause is the efficient cause by whose agency a thing comes to be. Now, what makes a thing to be or to take another form, that causes is the efficient cause. Then, every efficient cause must act for an end, a telos, a goal, a target, or a purpose. So when a thing is made, it's made for a purpose. When a thing is made, it is made for a particular purpose. We don't do anything or something for nothing. It is meant for a particular purpose. So the purpose for which things are produced is what we call the final cause. So the efficient cause and the final cause are outside of the produced thing, as in the provision of the maker or producer. A chair does not decide what use it is meant for. When we make a chair, the chair does not decide what it is meant for. We either make a chair to sit or for another particular purpose. The chairness does not decide the purpose for the chairness. Question 16. Instrumental and intrinsic ends in Aristotle mean. Instrumental and intrinsic ends in Aristotle mean A. Acts for the sake of other goals and acts good in themselves. B. Acts good for themselves and acts desirable in themselves. C. Happiness and a means to happiness. Then D. Desirable acts in themselves and the golden mean. Chang, we acknowledge the arrival of Chang. Is there any attempt? The right answer is A. Act for the sake of other goals and act good in themselves. Question 17. But before we move to that, another reminiscence. Aristotle distinguishes two types of ends in his moral teachings. The first is the instrumental end, and the second is the intrinsic end. What does Aristotle mean by instrumental end? And instrumental ends are acts done in view of or for the sake of some other goals. That is instruments. We say we have an instrument. Instrument is meant to carry out a particular goal. So instrumental ends are like means to the end. Those are instrumental ends or instrumental goals. While intrinsic ends are acts done for their own sake and not for the sake of some other purpose. Question 17. Aristotle's idea that morality is teleological is an application of his doctrine of. So the idea that morality is teleological is Aristotle's application of which doctrine? A. Change. B. Causality. C. Substance. And D. Helomorphism. Helomorphism. The right answer is Tang. Are we there? Bija. Aristotle's idea that morality is teleological is an application of his doctrine of causality. It should be recalled that in his book entitled Nicomachean Ethics, the beginning of the book, Aristotle declared that every act and every inquiry and similarity, or every act and every inquiry, and similarly every action and pursuit is thought to aim at some particular goal, at a certain good. The terminology of his passage adopts the terminology of the four causes and focuses on the final cause. Question 18. In what does a virtuous course of action consist according to Aristotle? When we talk of a virtuous course of action, what does it entail according to Aristotle? A. The golden mean. B. Happiness. C. Intrinsic ends. And D. Instrumental ends. When we talk of the virtuous course of an action, what does it entail according to Aristotle? Thank you. Lise Bilende Kunu has attempted an answer that is D. Lise Bilende Kunu is talking of D. That is the attempt. Is there any other answer? The right answer is B, the golden mean, and not D. It's not an instrumental end. It's the golden mean. So a virtuous course of action consists in choosing the golden mean. Aristotle argues that virtue is the golden mean. For a recall, it consists in choosing a reasonable midpoint between extremes, that is the two edges of an act, of a situation, including the golden mean, the average. So, for instance, courage is a virtue or mean between cowardice and rash action. On one hand, we have cowardice. On the other side, we have a rash action. So, courage is choosing that golden mean. So, the golden mean is relative. It varies from individual to another as different people have different capacities and different visions. So it cannot be the instrumental end. The right answer, as we said, is the golden The golden mean. So that was question 18, which we were trying to rush over the MCQs, and we are now moving to application exercise number 2. So as I earlier said, please, if you wish to answer a question, kindly unmute your mic. Bija, Chang, Fabian, Timothy, Kunu. If you wish to answer, kindly unmute your mic. So we are now moving to the second part of our revision revision lesson, and here we are focusing on essay questions. So we say question 19 is Gorgias. Is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? 25 marks. Remember, essays at the advanced level are marked on 25. So is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? So learners, please kindly indicate if you wish to answer a question. As I said, unmute your mic. Or a related question, suppose someone tells you that it is impossible to know anything at all. If you were Gorgias, would you agree or disagree? 25 marks. Let us assume that these are two possible GCE questions. If you have been asked, you enter the examination hall and you find this in front of you, how are you going to answer this question to obtain the 25 marks? Remember, this comes from the sophist. And our previous exercise, application exercise 1, was on the Post-Socratics, Plato and Aristotle. Now we are taking this from the sophist. So this will be our case study or the sample essay question for today, which will move directly into the answering of this question. But before we get into the answer of the question, we are going to do a reminiscence, a recall of the philosophical methodology, because we need to use the principles of the philosophical methodology in order to better answer this question. So, recall on philosophical methodology. When we talk of philosophical methodology, what do we mean? Method comes from the Latin word methodos and from the Greek word methodos, which both refers to way, path, direction, or manner. So philosophical methodology here could refer to the method, the manner in which, or the technique in which a student, a learner that you are, sitting in for the advanced level GC philosophy, the manner in which you are supposed to present your AC, the manner in which you are supposed to write your AC. We acknowledge the coming in of Justin, Valerie, so you are welcome. Please kindly follow us and mute your mic when the explanation is unfolded. But if you want to answer a question, you can unmute. So, as we rightly said, philosophical methodology refers to the manner in which we write an essay in philosophy to gain the 25 marks. This methodology has some principles. We have it is a specific way of presenting an essay, and we have some principles, which we say we have specific principles and fundamental principles. So, this is a methodology that we use in answering questions in paper 2 and paper 3. And we said philosophical essays are triadic in nature, meaning they are made up of 3 parts. We have the introduction, we have the body, and the conclusion. So we have introduction, body, and conclusion. The body itself is triadic in nature. The body itself is made up of 3 parts. That is the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. I repeat, the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. So all these constitute the triadic nature of a philosophical essay made up of fundamental and specific principles. Fundamental principles will refer to those parameters which we must follow while philosophizing or while unfolding with a philosophical essay. The first fundamental principle is that of problematization. A question in philosophy is emanating from a particular crisis of the mind. Now, problematizing or the problematization entails the issue at stake and the questioning of that problem. So that crisis that we are trying to look for a solution, that is what we term problematization, which is made up of the problem and the problematic. So the problem and the problematic constitute what we call the problematization in a philosophical essay. So every philosophical essay has a problem and needs to be questioned and answers provided. The second fundamental principle is that of argumentation. A philosophical essay is demonstrative in nature. It is a demonstrative expose which requires evidences, proofs, and facts in order to elucidate on the crisis. So every learner must have the spirit of problematization, the spirit of argumentation, where you have the thesis, the antithesis, you argue for, you argue against, and you synthesize, you bring the two, and try to bring out a particular idea from it. Again, the fundamental principle is that of the philosophical culture. A student, a learner that you are, must develop your philosophical culture. It means before philosophizing, you don't philosophize ex nihilo. You must philosophize from something. You must reflect or reason from somewhere. It means you need to be inspired by the ideas of others. You need to be inspired by the branches of philosophy. What is metaphysics? What is epistemology? What is ethics? What is logic, and so on and so forth, aesthetics. So you need to be inspired by this, and again, you need to know about the respective schools of thought in order to better enrich yourself. So it builds up your philosophical culture. And again, the last fundamental principle is that of an aesthetical presentation. Remember this, a philosophical dissertation requires an aesthetical presentation. The way you present your essay entices the examiner. The way you present your essay depicts the fact that you master or know what you are doing. Reason why you need to follow the methodology put in place. When we say a philosophical essay is triadic in nature, introduction, one paragraph. If the principle says one paragraph, you should put that one paragraph, skip a line, move to the body. Then from the body, you skip another line, you move to the conclusion. So the examiner clearly sees the three parts, and even in the body, he sees the three parts. And again, the aesthetical presentation of a philosophical essay equally requires the use of language and philosophical concept. So these are the four fundamental principles of a philosophical dissertation. And if we take our sample question, is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? 25 marks. Which we said we are going to use the principle, the methodology put in place. Introduction, which is made up of 5 marks. Body, which is made up of 17 marks. That's the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. Then the conclusion, 3 marks. How? Njume Allen, how do you obtain these marks? Robert, how do you obtain these respective marks? Fabian, how do you obtain, Bija, how do you obtain these respective marks in order to gain something better at the end from the examiner? So, we start with the introduction. We begin with the introduction. And as we said, the principles, the specific principles of an introduction has fundamentally 3 main elements you need to bring out. The background idea, the definition of key terms, and the problematization. We said the problematization is the problem and the problematic. And remember, the problem always ends with a full stop, while a problematic ends with a question mark. Because the problematic is a questioning of the problem. So, following our question on Gorgias' skepticism, is his skepticism tenable? You begin your essay, introduction, background idea. The background idea is that which lures you into your subject matter. And this is a possible background idea. It is not static. It means it is dynamic. It's just a possible background idea to the question we have just raised. And if I go back, you have a picture of the question. Is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? So you begin your essay paragraph by saying, the possibility and or reliability of knowledge has been an epistemological worry dealt with by the empiricist, the rationalist, and most especially the skeptics like Gorgias, or the doubters, or you can say the sophists like Gorgias. That already gives you your 1 mark. Why? Because from this background idea, you are already introducing the term skepticism. You are already introducing the philosopher Gorgias. You are already introducing some elements that will help you to now get into the definition of key terms. Because remember, skepticism is found in our question. Gorgias is found in our question. How do you bring it in? You need to have something we call a background idea that brings in this concept. So when you do that, you already have your 1 mark. Next, after the full stop, you move directly, the next sentence, that is a definition of key terms. And from our question, the first key term we identify there is skepticism. And what is skepticism? We say skepticism is the doctrine according to which certain knowledge is not accessible. The doctrine according to which certain knowledge, when we talk of certain knowledge, we are referring to knowledge that is sure, knowledge that is certain, assured knowledge. So, the doctrine according to which assured knowledge is not accessible. Knowledge, when we talk of knowledge, assured knowledge, what is knowledge? Knowledge is the cognition, the apprehension of the truth about something. When you have the knowledge of something, that awareness on something, that gives you your 2 marks. Remember, we've already had 2 key terms. We've already raised 2 key terms, 2 marks. You can decide to define skepticism, and you talk about Gorgias as one of the sophists whose philosophy was based on skepticism. So you can decide to talk about that. So this is just a guide. Problem. Now, we said every philosophical question has a problem which we are trying to give a solution. So the problem, as you said, ends with a full stop. It emanates from the main question. So knowledge, the problem, for you to bring out the problem, you can decide to formulate it this way. Our preoccupation at this juncture is about the knowledge content, is that knowledge content and the external world are heterogeneous. After your definition of key terms, directly you move into the problem. You can now make the examiner know that our preoccupation, our worry, our problem at this juncture is that knowledge, content, and the external world are heterogeneous. When we talk of heterogeneous, means different phases of substance. Chemistry, from chemistry, they can tell us that it is a different phases of substance. That's soup and starry, different elements. In mathematics, they will define heterogeneous as that which is incommensurable. So, this, we are trying to look now into the compatibility of knowledge content and the external world. Problematic. To what extent, so here, remember, we end with a full stop. And the problematic, to what extent, then, can the external world be cognized? That is a sample problematic. Or, if this, you cannot take this, or you cannot produce this, we have the second. Can the external world actually be known? So always make emphasis of the, give a word of emphasis, actually, really. Can the external world really be known? Can we actually know the external world? Question mark. Can we really know the external world? Question mark. So that gives you your 1 mark for the problematic and the 1 mark for the problem. And remember, the problematic is always ending the introduction. It is from here that you move directly to the next paragraph. Maybe you skip a line for the purpose of aesthetics. You skip a line, then you move to your body, paragraph. That is the thesis. Now, the thesis to our question, remember we're talking about the skepticism of Gorgias. Thesis statement, we need to state the point, that's a thesis statement, explain the point, demonstrate, justify the point, demonstrate the point, and conclude the point. So, following our question, for Gorgias, thesis statement, for Gorgias, the external world is not knowable due to heterogeneity. Take note of this. Remember that Gorgias is a radical skeptic. According to Gorgias, nothing exists. And if something exists, it cannot even be known. And even if it is known, it cannot be communicated. And even if it is communicated, it cannot be understood. So Gorgias is a radical skeptic, different from the skepticism of René Descartes. René Descartes gets into methodic doubt. it's a methodical, we talk about methodical skepticism, but Gorgias is radical skepticism. So, for Gorgias, the external world is not knowable. So something that is out of us cannot be known due to heterogeneity. Explanation. This means that the external world and knowledge are of completely different natures with nothing in common between them. That gives you a 1.5 marks. Remember, just the thesis statement is 2 marks. It ends you at 2 marks. Then you explain. This means that, you see the phrase, this means that, so it is explaining the point that has been stated. So after the explanation, which gives you 1.5 marks, you move to the justification. How do you justify this point? Awareness of the external world, you can say according to Gorgias, awareness of the external world is mediated by sense impression. But knowledge is based on mere formulas. Since thought is largely linguistic, sense impressions are categorized into mere words or formulas with a consequent loss of intuitive content. This loss of intuitive content is proof of inadequate cognition of external world. That is the justification to the point you have raised and explained. And it gives you 1.5 marks. Illustration, that is now an example. You need to always give an example. Here, you can decide to say, this explains why God just declared that nothing exists. And if something, you can quote or paraphrase. This explains that, or this explains why God just declared that, you quote or you paraphrase, nothing exists. If something exists, it cannot be known. If at all it is being known, it cannot be communicated. And if at all it can be communicated, it cannot be understood. Full stop. You have given an illustration. Or another possibility is that you take a natural, a realistic example. Certain frequencies of sound and light, like the ultraviolet rays, ultraviolet radiation, are imperceptible to humans, to human thoughts, though bats and other rodents can perceive them. It means bats and other rodents can perceive these UV rays, but humans can hardly perceive them or perceive them with a lot of difficulty. So that is just an example, a realistic example you are giving to justify, to demonstrate your point. So it gives you a 1 mark. Then I will move to the clincher. Remember, every part of the body has an introduction and a conclusion. The introduction is what we call a thesis statement, and the conclusion is what we call the clincher. So you can now conclude by saying, thus, therefore, or you say, hence, knowledge of the external world cannot be true or reflect reality, cannot reflect reality, or cannot be true. So you are just concluding, confirming what was being stated and which is making you finish your thesis. A thesis, the point 4, what you are standing, that is the main question, the point 4. Now, antithesis, the point against, this directly concludes your thesis and takes you now to your antithesis. Remember, moving from the thesis to the antithesis, you don't skip a line, you just take a paragraph. It is moving from the body to the thesis, from the introduction to the thesis, that you skip a line, and from the synthesis to the conclusion, that you skip a line. But you are not forced to do that. But for the purpose of aesthetics, you can do it. So, from this, we move now to the antithesis, the contradiction of what we've seen. So with Gorgias, we've seen that nothing exists. We've seen with Gorgias that nothing exists. So his skepticism, normally the world outside cannot be known. Now the converse of it, you can start your antithesis with an introduction before stating. You can say, conversely, or contrary to the point above, we can observe at this juncture that, or we can gladly say that, so you try to bring a little contradiction, which is introducing the thesis. That contrary to, or conversely to the point above, we can gladly say that there are words indicating signs that bear a direct connection with the external world. It means that words that what including sounds or signs that can barely direct our connection with the external world. There you have stated the point. Now, what does this mean? You will now want to explain. This means that of the formulas used in cognizing and or representing the external world, some take their original form and so are contiguous with the external world and cannot be reductions of the external world. They take the forms of the external world but cannot be reductions of the external world. So you are just explaining the point that has been stated. That gives you a 1.5 marks. You justify now the point. And how do we justify this point? Since there are signs and words contiguous with the external world, it follows that not all signs are mere conventional formulae. And so the cognitive inadequacy thesis fails at this juncture. So it cannot be tenable because not all signs are mere conventional formulae. That gains you your 1.5. So every statement you make earns you a mark. Every statement you make earns you a mark. So you should be very careful on the type of statements you make and how there should be some logical connections from one point, specific principles to another. Thesis statement, explanation, justification, illustration or exemplification, then conclusion. There should be a connection to earn your mark. So, for example, from here you can say, for example, for instance, of such words include onomatopoeic words and signs like pictures or diagrams. So that gives you your 1 mark. Therefore, thus, hence, at least some knowledge of the external world is adequate since the cognitive content is adequate. So, as the cognitive content is adequate, some words of the external world too are adequate. So, it could be knowable. So, this is a contradiction of Gorgias's point of view. Another student can use other philosophers out of even the sophists, even the Post-Socratics to contradict Gorgias, but we stay within this scope. So it depends on the student. It depends on your knowledge, on your dynamism, how you take the point and make it useful in order to be at a level of a thesis or the antithesis. Synthesis, remember, syn means bringing together. So synthesis is bringing together the thesis and the antithesis, and we follow the same pattern. You have to state the point. Though there may be an adequate cognition of the external world in some cases, such cognitions remains representations and not presentations. So this point now, you realize that this statement is bringing together the thesis and the antithesis. The fact that nothing is knowable and the fact that something is knowable. So though there may be an adequate cognition of the external world in some cases, such cognition remains representation and not presentations. 1 mark. This means that the representation of a thing remains always a modification of that thing rather than the thing itself, or rather than the self-givingness of the thing itself. So rather than the thing itself, or rather than the self-givingness of that thing itself. That gives you a 1.5 marks. So as I earlier said, the statements you make, they should be connections. Justification of that. Since cognition is not the self-givingness of the thing itself, it is mediated by significance. So the importance, the essence. The signifier, significance, and significant mediation shows that cognition is not immediate. Cognition is mediate and not immediate. So we will take this connection between the signifier, the significance, and the significate. We realize that cognition is not immediate. That was a justification to our explanation. There, for instance, The number of colors, now you see we're taking an example. The number of colors, for instance, varies between languages. Though the human eye perceives fairly the same range of colors, irrespective of race. Irrespective of race. So Robert, who is connected with us, is putting on a white shirt. But now, the term white shirt differs from one language to the other, but the eye sees the colorness or the whiteness of the shirt. So the color remains from the sight, but in terms of language, it could differ. So that is why we say the number of colors, for instance, varies between languages, though the human eye perceives fairly the same range of colors, irrespective of race. That is 0.5 marks. Then you conclude, therefore, hence, always use these terms, therefore, hence, thus, it remains plausible that knowledge of the external world cannot be certain and reliable. Even though it is there, but it cannot be certain and reliable. This is a possible synthesis. Now, another student can go very far. Another student can go very far to contradict Gorgias using the Post-Socratics, like René Descartes, or let me say the rationalist and the empiricist. Another student, because with the rationalist, we realize that something, so this is now an epistemological worry, as we earlier said, something exists, yes, because God just said nothing exists. But now with the rationalist and empiricist, something exists. But now the worry, the question is, how do we get the reliable knowledge, the real source of things? How do we know things? One we say it is from reasoning, the other one we say it is from the sense perception. So another student can use that aspect, that domain, in order to contradict Gorgias. So to conclude, this is the conclusion of the entire essay, not the conclusion of an argument. Remember, the thesis has an introduction and a conclusion. The antithesis has an introduction and a conclusion. The synthesis has an introduction and a conclusion. But the introduction and the conclusion of the essay differs from that. So we had our introduction, and now we have the conclusion. So this is the conclusion of the entire essay, which carries 3 marks. How do you get these 3 marks? Normally, you have now arrived at the end of your essay. You can decide to use some, remember we say philosophizing too is a use of language. Our intellectual journey so far has been to assess, to examine. Or you say our journey this far, normally we are from an intellectual journey. So we are now landing. So you can say our intellectual journey so far has been, or we say our problem was to determine to what extent the external world is cognizable. So after your body, you skip a line, you now start your conclusion, paragraph. Our intellectual journey so far has been to determine to what extent the external world is cognizable or could be known. The external world could be known. Full stop. Summary. You have done a recall of what you were talking about. Now the summary of what you said. Our investigation has revealed that though there may be some adequacy between cognitive science and the objective world, knowledge remains inadequate insofar as it is significance mediated. Insofar as it is significance mediated, knowledge remains inadequate at that level. So that is a summary. We'll now give our personal judgment. Take note. While giving the personal judgment, never use I. No, when our tutors were always saying you, when you say I, you, who, because you have not arrived at the parameters, the arena of being quoted somewhere. So you are deliberating, you are reflecting with exchanging even with the examiner. Say we, you can always say we. Or our observation is that, so now the personal judgment is that the end result is that, or our end result is that, or we can gladly say that between the objective, not I can say that, no. Not I can gladly say that, or my end result is no. Always cancel that. So, we can gladly say that between the objective world and the knowledge we have of it, there is intuitive data lost, resulting in adequacy in cognition. That is your own observation. That is your own personal judgment, which gives you 1 mark. Now you connect it directly to the significance of all what we have been saying in the essay. How important this question or this subject matter has been. This question finds its pertinence in the scientific pretension to knowing and revealing the true nature of the world to us. The possibility of such an enterprise depends on it. So that depicts the importance, the significance of what you have been saying throughout. So from there, you now give in a new horizon, a new opening, which it could be whether or not language as language can speak reality. It is a connected issue to be taken later. So, what are we trying to say here? From this, what do you depict? Jume? Robert? What do you depict from here, from this? Please, if you want to speak, you can unmute your mic. What do you depict? We are opening the debate to another level, taking the debate to another level. So this is permitting you, the new opening, is permitting you to launch a teaser. From the question that has been answered, you are launching a teaser to open another sphere of discussion or debate. So that is a sample of the conclusion and how you can possibly use the philosophical methodology in order to better have a good essay. Remember, you need to use this methodology in paper 2. You need to use this methodology in paper 3. And each essay is 25 marks. If you master your methodology well and you respect the fundamental principles, which I recall, we have the problematization, we have the argumentation, we have the philosophical culture, and we equally have the aesthetical presentation. Once you master this, and again, you make sure everything is okay with your writing and spelling, believe you me, you won't have any issue. So yes, I heard someone talking. Is there any question? We have just ended the lesson of today with the consolidation exercises on the sophist and the Post-Socratics, Plato and Aristotle. So, on one hand, we went through the MCQs based on Plato and Aristotle. Then, on the other hand, the second exercise, we had an essay sample on Gorgias, one of the sophists. Because remember, the main sophist we talked about, we have a Protagoras of Abdera, we have Gorgias of Leontini, and we have Thrasymachus. We'll talk of Thrasymachus, we get into justice, the society, or the ethics, whereby he made mention of the fact that justice is the interest of the stronger party. We will talk of epistemology with Gorgias, and who was a radical skeptic. In fact, he spoke of radical skepticism. According to him, nothing exists. So we wanted to take this essay in order to demonstrate what is expected of you come GCE 2024. This is just a sample. This is just a sample. So is there any question? I acknowledge the presence of Timo Timba. I acknowledge the presence of Jacqueline, Adri Castella, Robert, Jume.
Then my question.
Yes.
Question goes thus. This are we to
Please come again. Okay, I'm not getting you well, but if I can just pick it, you are talking about arguments or points. Timothy, are you there?
I saw in your illustration, I saw just one. I saw one point stated and illustrated in the thesis, and one point in the stated and illustrated in the antithesis. I wish to know how many points in our essay, when writing our essay, how many points should we state?
Okay, thank you very much, Timothy.
5 marks.
Yes, that is a very good question on philosophical methodology. Listen keenly, and it goes to everyone. Permit me first of all tell you that for you to be able to be qualified as a philosopher or as a student who has gone through the philosophical culture, you must not present a plethoric of points. That is why we are not talking here about points. We are talking about arguments. So what are the arguments that you could present, bring forth to convince the examiner that you master a particular point for, a particular idea for, or a particular thing against? So how do you stand for? How do you stand against? And how do you bring a balance, a bridge, solving the problem? So, one, we are not talking about points, we're talking about arguments. So, in the thesis, we require that you present one argument. In the antithesis, we require that you present one argument. And in the synthesis, we require that you present one argument. But take note, when we talk of arguments, what are the things that permit your argument to be solid? They are the points. So it depends now on you, the student, how methodical you are. A student that I am, I might decide to use 1 point to form my argument. Another student can decide to take 2 points and put together to form an argument. Another student can decide to take 3 points and put together to form an argument. But what matters here is how you develop this argument. In fact, how you make your argument to be coherent and consistent, logical. From the thesis statement, explanation, justification, illustration, and conclusion. How you start the argument and how you end the argument. So, if you want to talk about argument, you are required to present 3 main arguments. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But when you need points to form the arguments, it depends now on you. You can use 1 point to develop your argument. You can use 2 points put together to develop your argument. So it depends now on how you use the conjunction and. You can use the conjunction and to develop the argument. Or to put 2 points together. So Mba, I don't know if it is understood. If I've tried at giving you an answer to your question.
Thank you very much. And the second question, sorry, about the transitional paragraph from the thesis to the antithesis, is it necessary?
Okay, listen. Necessity here, I believe, necessity here now will depend on what you want. When I say necessity depends on what you want, it depends on the language you use. But according to me, it is always good to indicate to the examiner that you are moving from one part of the argument of your argument to another. Reason why, if I am writing, I can decide to say, conversely or contrary to the stated argument or the argument above, we can conversely say that, or we can say that. I don't know if you understand it. So you try to give a nuance before now you state the point. But your first statement should always, there should be an indicator in the first statement of the antithesis that you are moving to the next part. Because remember, there you don't skip a line. But there should be an indicator. Conversely, comma, that is already a statement. Conversely, comma, contrary to the above argument, that is a possible contradiction. So I can say it is important. It is important for you to do that. But it doesn't mean that if you don't do it, you'll be penalized. But it's important to beautify your essay, to beautify your work. Reason why we remember, one fundamental principle of philosophical essay is the aesthetical presentation of your work. And that goes alongside language. And when we take the aspect of Plato, according to Plato, philosophizing is to know how to speak. Philosopher, c'est savoir ce que parler veut dire, if I can put that in French. So you should always know how to play and nuance, bring in some good phrases, sentences that can entice the examiner, that can make the examiner feel that people are communicating. Because remember, you have to earn the marks. So Timothy, is it okay? Hello, Timothy? Is there any other question? Jume? Jume is there?
Yes, not quite. Just an appreciation of what you have done so far, and to say that really the aesthetical part of an AC also involves language.
Exactly.
It's not just the general presentation of the script.
Thank you.
Some other people may think. So language too counts a lot. The whole aim is just to convince people that you can have a point, defend it to the end.
Exactly.
Because that is where the power of the philosopher comes out. So kudos to you and the team.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so as you have heard, Jumewu is connected. It is language is very important when you are expounding on your philosophical AC. The structure too is very, very important. And Stella is on. Is there any question? It's just like we can just take another, maybe that will be a question for another session. The philosophy of the sophist is diametrically opposed to that of Socrates. So when it's diametrically opposed, you realize that you will take on one hand, you can talk about their epistemology and their ethics, that no, they are not opposed. But on the other hand, you say they are opposed. So how do you play with that? To show that no, these people, they are not opposed. They are together. But at the same time, so that is what Nietzsche calls dancing within the chains. So you say one thing, and at the same time, you develop that ability, that capacity of saying the contrary. Then again, personally by yourself, you bring in the two, and you have now the balance. So always put this in mind, please, because this has killed so many students who cannot unfold their philosophical, their aces well, who cannot even develop their aces well. Remember, just having a wonderful introduction is 5 marks. Just having a beautiful conclusion is 3 marks. That already gives you 8 marks out of 25. 8 marks out of 25. So once you follow this structural organization and principles, then you are set to go. So is there any other question? We have a few minutes to go. I believe about 10 minutes or 15 to go.
Sir, please a question.
Yes?
Sir, please can you help and state some other points that we can use for the thesis and the antithesis that we will develop on our own, but you just state the points.
Okay, that is Ngwe Lucy. Yes, remember, I already even gave an element on the antithesis, but now it's good we go back to the question for you to better understand. So, is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? This, normally we are accepting. We are accepting. Is Gorgias' skepticism tenable? Yes, you have to accept that his skepticism is tenable. And accepting that the skepticism of Gorgias is tenable, and what is skepticism? That is the impossibility of attaining knowledge. And remember again, before we get into that, know the elements of the sophist. So according to the sophist, there was no possibility of acquiring knowledge. But again, they were mercantilistic, going around, receiving money to send out knowledge. What were they even teaching? So that is the contradiction. The contradiction, the critique brought in by Socrates. So already, at the level of the antithesis, you can decide. I just want to get to, at the level of the antithesis, you can decide, as I earlier said, 1, you use Plato. You use René, the rationalist. You can use the rationalist and the empiricist. You can put the two, or you use one, either the rationalist or the empiricist, to contradict Gorgias. Because according to Gorgias, nothing can be known. Knowledge does not exist. But now we see that with the rationalists, they are not at the level of nothing exists. They are at the level of something exists, but how can we get reliable knowledge? The real source of knowledge. Where in the rationalists we say it is reason. While the empiricists we say it is the senses, sense perception. So you can exploit that contrary to the antithesis we've given here to contradict Gorgias. At the same time, you can equally use, another student can decide to use Socrates to contradict Gorgias. Another student can decide to use Socrates to contradict Gorgias. Now, the thesis, as I earlier said, normally we are there to accept that there is, accept the philosophy of Gorgias of Leontini, that nothing exists. Now, this, for you to do that, you can get into the domain of his, we can put it like metaphysics. We can take it in the domain of metaphysics. Remember, they shifted knowledge from cosmology to anthropocentrism. Now, putting man at the center of knowledge. The problem there with them is that when we realize this, they are putting man at the apex of, even above above the supreme being, but at the same time considering man not to have the capacity of receiving knowledge. So again, with Gorgias, we can use the aspect of nihilism. You can use the point of, if you want to state the point, you can take the Gorgias nihilism. You can put the point on Gorgias nihilism to support the fact that of what he's saying, that nothing exists. Then you take his justification, as I said, contrary to the justification we use here. Contrary to this, or this illustration, contrary to this, we can now use his quotation. You can now use his saying that nothing exists. If something exists, even if it exists, we cannot know it. And even if we manage to know it, we cannot communicate it. And even if we manage to communicate it, we cannot know it. So the first thing is that with the thesis, we can either use his title it is Gorgias' nihilism, or we use the one we have here, but use the same explanation. The antithesis, you can now go a little bit out, remain with him, or you go a little bit out using Socrates, or you use the rationalist, or you use the empiricist. So there's always a nuance you can do on that. So, I don't know if I've tried giving you another tip.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Yes, is there anyone? I'm seeing and please kindly indicate your schools, please. Let me try and know where you're coming from. I see Lycée Bilingue de Kounou connected. So is there any other worry? And as we rightly said, maybe from the other the previous aspect of our revision, we raised Plato and Aristotle, and we spoke about one thing we tried to highlight, like from the MCQ. We realized, we spoke about the political aspect, political philosophy of Plato, and his moral philosophy put together, and which we noticed his movement of ideas, his movement of knowledge. And one thing we should take note of is that Plato, we consider Plato was influenced by Heraclitus and Parmenides. Plato was influenced by Heraclitus and Parmenides on the aspect of change. Reason why when he comes up and he's trying to support his master Socrates, and he is taking the aspect of change in the society and trying to look into the real nature of things. That explains why we through his allegory of the cave, we realize that he's making us understand how one can be certain of arriving or obtaining the real nature of things. And we saw his two worlds, the intelligible world and the sensible world, wherein Plato is making us understand that we need to leave the physical world. We see Lycée Technique Dayos, who has just joined us. Welcome. Fortunately, we are left with a few minutes to go. So, but welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, Plato asking us to leave the sensible world, the physical world, because it is a world of imitation, the world of deception, and move to the intelligible world. That is where the right knowledge of things are. But now, when we move from the physical world to the intelligible world, he uses his method, what we call the dialectics. So we have the ascending dialectics. So we move up using the ascending dialectics. Now when we are already up there, we don't just go up and come back down, descending. No, we use the ascending dialectics. From there, we now go through the contemplative dialectics, where we receive, we tap the knowledge, tap the real nature of things. Then now we descend, that's the descending dialectics, to throw light on the society, to show the right way to the people. So that is why this is being connected to his politics, wherein we realize that in his book titled Plato the Republic, in his book titled The Republic, wherein the justice that is gotten from the soul is being transmitted to the society, the tripartite nature of the society, wherein every human needs to know his role in the society and play that role accordingly. The skilled hands, the artisan, should produce. Those who are courageous, they should defend. The soldiers, the watchdogs, and those who are wise, learned, educated, they now need those who have wisdom. They are now the leaders. So everybody should respect his role in the society. That brings in justice in the society and compatibility. That explains why he said in the Republic that the human race shall never see the end of peace until philosophers are made kings, or kings of some dispositions are made philosophers. It means those who have that knowledge, that wisdom, are the ones who are supposed to rule, guided by the philosopher kings, the soldiers, and the artisans. They should respect they should play their role in the production. So if everyone respects his role, everyone respects his position in the society, that will bring about justice in the society. That is why Plato is not in for democracy. Plato rejected democracy and instead opted for aristocracy, wherein the few who rule for the interest of the people and not themselves. So, reason why we see the contradiction now with Aristotle, where with Aristotle, who is an immediate student of Plato, comes in, but is valorizing constitutional democracy, what he calls policy. So we tried. I just wanted to bring in this nuance because someone just asked that little question there, and I'm from GBHS Mabanda Kumba. You are welcome. Right, we are very happy having you on board from Kumba, Mabanda GBHS Mabanda Kumba, Lycée Technique Dayos. You are welcome. Babicast of Bafusam. That is great. You will have these lessons. You will have the lessons sent to you. You have the lessons sent to you, and you can even view them afterwards. Those who just came in, you have not lost anything. Oyono Kodo, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Monica Fese, thank you for joining us. So, is there any? This is. I'm sure we are left with 7 minutes. 5 to 7 minutes. So, this was our presentation today for those who are just joining us. For those who are just joining us, my colleague last week presented a lesson on the sophists, on the Post-Socratics, that is Plato and Aristotle. So today, our work was to do a consolidation exercise, was to try and see on how we can implement, how we can apply the techniques of answering the questions. The first is through the MCQs, and the MCQs came from Plato and Aristotle, that is the Post-Socratics. And we decided to take an essay from the sophists, specifically from the skepticism of Gorgias. The skepticism of Gorgias. And our question was, is Gorgias' skepticism, remember Gorgias of Leontini, who was one of the sophists, alongside Protagoras of Abdera and Thrasymachus, who focused his philosophy on justice. So we have demonstrated our essay, we have answered the question in an essay format, what you are expected to do in any examination condition, be it during your upcoming mock, or be it during the GC, or any other evaluation given to you. And just for a reminiscence, a recall, for the few 5 minutes we have, we said a philosophical essay is made up of 5 paragraphs. We said it is triadic in nature. It means it has 3 fundamental parts. The first part is the introduction, the second part is the body, and the third part is the conclusion. From the introduction to the body, for the purpose of aesthetics, you can skip a line. Because some of you are writing are so choked up that when you join them, we cannot really detect while marking, and you can stress the examiner. But for the purpose of aesthetics, from the introduction to the body, you can skip a line. From the body, that is a synthesis, after the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, from the body to the conclusion, you skip a line. But from the thesis to the antithesis to the synthesis, you don't skip a line. And each part, the introduction, body, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, conclusion, stands on its own in a paragraph. So we have 5 paragraphs. We just don't want you to write a good number of things. Yes, Oyono, Kodo, I can see your hand up. So we have 5 paragraphs. So the introduction, 5 marks. And for the 5 marks, you have 3 fundamental things you need to do. You need to give your background idea. I will say the background idea is that which brings you to your subject matter. And you realized with our background idea that we took it from an epistemological point of view, that the aspect of knowledge, the problem of knowledge has been an epistemological worry dealt with by the rationalists, the empiricists, and most especially the sophists like Gorgias, or most especially Gorgias. So that is just an idea of a background idea, which permits you now to define the skepticism or talk about Gorgias, which is found in the question. That gives you your 5 marks. When you do it well, you do the presentation well. That gives you a 1 mark for the background idea. Then you move now to the definition of key terms, where you define them well. It gives you a 2 marks. Then from there you move to the problem, the problematization. I would say the problematization is the problem and the problematic, which gives you your 1 mark, that is 5 marks. Your body, you move to your thesis, your antithesis, your synthesis. Then from there you have your 17 marks. And we say the thesis is always a yes to the question. If the question is negative, your thesis should be saying a yes to that negativity. If your question is positive, your thesis should be saying a yes to the question. For instance, let me just say that, use this question. As I earlier said, the philosophy of the sophist was diametrically opposed to that of Socrates. Discourse was diametrically opposed. So they are telling you that they were of opposite side. So your thesis is a yes to the fact that they were diametrically opposed. If the question is, the philosophy of the sophist was not diametrically opposed to that of Socrates. Discourse. Your thesis would be that yes, they were not diametrically opposed. So it depends on whether you use the epistemology and ethics to justify. So that is the meaning of thesis. While the antithesis is a contradiction of the thesis, the other side of it. So if your thesis was a yes, your antithesis will be a no. If your thesis was a yes to the positive point, your antithesis will be a no. So that is it for the body, the antithesis, then the synthesis, a bringing together. Then now you move to your conclusion. you conclude your essay, and that is also. Dear students, I believe we're left with 1 minute, and our next lesson will dwell on St. Thomas Aquinas. So our next lesson will be on St. Thomas Aquinas. So I wish you well. I wish you the best, and see you next time. Don't forget to invite your friends. Don't forget to always be with us. Invite your friends to always get connected, because this is the best method in which we can connect to you and give you the little we can share. So God bless you. Thank you very much. I see Lycée Technique de Douala. Robert, thank you for being there. Timo Timba, thank you. Monica Fese, thank you. Jume Allen, thank you. And I see a whole the panel from the regional bench of Littoral, Lycée Technique de Douala Kumasi, effective 5 who are on board. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Our time is up. Okay, I thought that you forgot. It was it's 2:30, right? No, we're ending at 2:30, right?